wonderful 2 days. The first 2 days were fantastic. There was great participation from everyone. We had almost 400 attendees, coming into this webinar. We're also happy that it's not crossed 500 because our limit for this webinar is 500 only. So this is fantastic. And today we are getting more and more coaches in. It's very good. For the ones who are coming back, welcome back. And then the ones who are joining in new, there are a few coaches who I think are joining in new. This webinar is an initiative of the Sports Authority of India in collaboration with the All India Tennis Association. And this whole webinar and the course and the contents were put together by the team of tutors of the Coaches Education Program of the All India Tennis Association. So welcome you all. And today we have a lot of exciting things happening for you. As we did in the last 2 days, today also we have a celebrity coming in. And I'm gonna allow you to guess. Are there any guesses of who the celebrity is? Without any clues, can you guess? No, it's not Ramkumar. Okay, he's a Arjuna Award winner in 2018. Yes. Without even getting a clue, people are able to guess who it is. I don't know how Harjeet Singh, I don't know how you guess. Yes, it is Rohan Bopanna. Himanshu, could you bring Rohan Bopanna? He's there on the attendees list. Rohan Bopanna, can you bring him in, please? Hi, Basudip.
Hi.
Would you want to say address the coaches before we start?
I will just say hello to. I mean, first of all, thank very warm welcome to Rohan.
Hi, Rohan.
So good to see you. And of course, you've already introduced today's session. We've had 2 absolutely wonderful days of coaching webinar. I will take this opportunity to also once again thank the Sports Authority of India, to Mr. Sandeep Pradhan, the DG Sports DG Sai, Radhika Shriman, the executive ED teams, and of course Lalita Sharma ji, who's the regional director, Sonipat Sai, who's been very helpful, and my special word of thanks to Himanshu from Sai Sonipat, who's been doing an absolutely wonderful job of putting everything together, making sure there are no glitches. So thank you so much, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of this absolutely amazing coaches webinar, and welcome Rohan once again. Thank you
so much. Thank you, Mr. Vishwadeep.
Thank you.
Hi, Rohan. We are very excited to have you here. On behalf of all the coaches and AITA and Sports Authority of India, I extend a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. It's lovely being here, and it's a great initiative, I think, by you all to have been doing this. We are all going through these tough times, but nothing like learning some good information about tennis, coaching, everything. So I think it's a good platform here for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the whole idea why this was initiated. And talking about the lockdown, could you say a few words about the lockdown and what do you think is going to happen in the near future, your opinion about it, and what you're doing during this lockdown?
I think the main thing for us, to follow exactly what is happening is to stay at home. And while we are at home, it's very important to have a routine. Like we have a routine every single day, whether we're going to office or whether we're going to the tennis court or whatever it may be. Even if I'm going for my match, I do have a routine of how I prepare, what time I eat. So I think it's very important to do that. Eat your meals also timely. Just because we're at home doesn't mean you shift or change everything.
Yeah.
I have a fitness routine exactly every day at 5 o'clock. So I make sure I'm ready for that. I eat 2 hours before, even doing that exercise. So I try and maintain that. So that actually helps me to know what exactly every day I have in plan, even though we don't know. It's very indefinite about when the ATP tour is going to start, or the AITA tournaments are going to start. Everybody is still under lockdown, and till this virus, everything is cleared. It's good to have a basic routine, and that's what I've been really doing. And luckily here at home, I have a wall to practice, and I've been doing some wall practice. And for some reason, I just cannot beat this opponent.
Totally, yeah. It's very challenging, yeah. And
Absolutely.
so, talking about fitness, is there any difference between doing fitness? Because you are also a very good singles player. You were ranked 213 in the world at one point of time. And then you shifted over to doubles. We'll talk about that a bit later. Can you tell us what's the difference? Do you do anything differently after you switched over to doubles in terms of fitness?
I think one of the key things over the years I had learned is how important a fitness trainer is, and doing the right kind of fit exercises for tennis specific training.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think when I started as a junior was even there. Not many trainers really knew about it. Unfortunately, we didn't have access to these kind of trainers.
Yeah.
There were no video calls or WhatsApp calls or whatever back then to really talk to anybody. So I think that is where today the kids can benefit a lot. At my tennis academy, the Rohan Bopanna Tennis Academy in Bangalore, I specifically bought this gentleman called Chelston Pinto, who's there in our academy, especially because he focuses all on strength work, agility, balance, which is very important for tennis. And over the years, traveling with a physio full time has actually enhanced my game to prolong it for this long in my career, I think. So that those are the things I think we have to focus on. We constantly worry about whether the results or everything tennis related, but I think it's the movement is the main thing of tennis players we really need to focus on in today's generation.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree with that. Talking about Chelston Pinto, incidentally, he's the one who's giving the presentation today. I'm sure you're aware of it. Do you want to say a few words about him? Can you give him a small intro?
Yeah, 1 second. Chelston has been working now for past 1.5 2 years in our academy. He's got like tremendous experience working with sportsmen with different disciplines. He's a former football player himself. He has a great understanding in needs of high performance athletes. He specializes enhancing athlete performance, and is also certified from the Australian SNC Association, and is a certified personal trainer of the Nesta. So I think not only the experience of him being also with tennis players for these 2 years, he has also learned a lot, and I think the tennis players have benefited tremendously. I mean, one of the guys who made a big change in his game through his fitness was Nikki Kalyanda Punacha, who actually ended up winning the men's nationals last year in Delhi. He I think has made a huge difference in terms of his flexibility, his agility, the way he moves. He had a big game. He still has a big game, but I think he kept getting injured a lot. So this is something Chelston really focused on. In our academy.
Okay. Rohan, you just went off the air for a few seconds there.
Sorry, sir. No, I was just saying, I mean, it's such a valuable person to have in our academy that I think all these kids today can benefit. I mean, I would have loved to have somebody like him when I played when I started my singles career back then.
Yes,
So I feel that today, if we can give the opportunity to these guys, in India, we are very talented in our hands, extremely gifted. but the movement is where we really lack. And I think the other key part is never to compare, I feel, our athletes to a Nadal or a Federer. We have to see what our strengths are and work on that. We cannot tell a kid, okay, Rissa or Rafa plays, you have to play like him. Unfortunately, we don't have that. Our abilities are different, and I think with those abilities, we need to really build their strength to to make a champion out of from India.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it has nothing to do with race. It's just the innate talents that each individual has, and he brings it forward. And then probably the trainer will be able to identify the talents, and then even advise. The coach and the trainer together, they could advise the kind of style the player needs to adapt to perform at the highest level. Yeah, talking about fitness specific to tennis, which is completely true. Can you throw some light on how specific it has to be if somebody is focused on doubles at a certain point of time? Because today I know like 4 or 5 of our players have shifted over to specialize in doubles, and they're doing quite well, and they need to move up more. So we would like to have some information about what do you do specifically for doubles?
I mean, there are specific doubles kind of drills. I mean, the lot of double specialty movements are forward and backward, not so much lateral, because your transition is towards going towards the net and staying low at the net, doing a lot of squats in terms of making sure your legs are strong, because there's constantly you're playing the I formation or the Aussie formation, and then a lot of vertical jumps as well. I mean, these are few things we really need to focus on. And today, if you see in the ATP Tour also, I think a lot of the players are playing doubles. Not only because it enhances their game, but also right now with three players winning all the Grand Slams, rest are taking a chance to come and at least do well in the doubles. So doubles is getting extremely tough. It's tough to break through as well. I mean, there are a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of the players from India trying to make that step, jump into that top 50, top 30, top 20 level. But having said that, the fitness still is a very, very high level of just because you're playing doubles and you're saying you're playing on the half court and you have somebody there, it doesn't mean you work less. I think you work equally to as much as somebody would play singles also.
Totally, absolutely. Maybe the endurance part could be slightly different.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, but still, having said that, if you're there at Wimbledon, you don't know how long the match could go on.
Yes.
So it's always good to have a good endurance. There are certain days you end up playing 2 matches in a day in case it's raining. So you never know. So I mean, yes, I mean, when you're young, you can do and work a lot on your fitness definitely. And of course there is when you're getting older, you try and maintain your body and see what's best for you, and make sure you do the right stretches and the cooling down, which is the most important, I think, today when I'm playing. Making sure quality amount of time I spend on my training and tennis.
Okay, fantastic. You mentioned about your junior days, and if I remember right, you were training in Pune at some point of time when you were 15, 16. I don't know exactly when.
Yeah, then, correct. That's right.
Yeah, and then you moved to Bangalore to Bhupati's Academy, and then I remember you were training a lot with my friend Karthikeyan.
Correct. That's right.
Like a lot of singers and stuff like that. And just before that is when, till then I didn't even I don't have knowledge, I might be wrong, that you were not performing that great even in the Indian circuit in the juniors or the men. And then when you were, I think, 18 or something like that, you came out and you won a men's tournament in Chennai, beating a lot of good players. So I want you to throw some light on how you stayed motivated in spite of the fact that you weren't performing that well. I don't know if I'm right there. I just want to connect junior performance to performing in the seniors and at the top level.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. When I started off, I actually went for selection in Britannia Amrita Tennis Academy back then. Unfortunately, didn't get selected. I went again to few other academies, didn't get selected. Even in Pune to the Batra Tennis Center, they said yes. When I was in Pune, I could come and play there, but they will not give me a scholarship. I had to pay for everything and, play. Then at that point in time, my dad said, at least you can get a chance to play with some good players. So he put me there. There were 3 coaches back then. One was Nandan Bal, one was Balachandran, who I think spoke yesterday to you all. One was Mr. Narendranath, who everybody known as Chubby.
Yes.
So I was there a good 5 years, and back then as a junior, my game wasn't great. I was still going like a journeyman, going every week, training, not knowing, where the tennis was headed. My dad gave me a bicycle and he said, this is what your mode of transport was. And every day I had about 15 kilometers in Pune, just going to fitness, coming back, going to tennis, coming back. So after 4 years, then I just forced my dad to give me a motorcycle because I had enough of my, the riding the bicycle.
Okay.
And actually the tournament, the men's tournament you're talking about in Chennai, in Besant Nagar, actually came when I was 21.
Oh, okay.
So much later, past my juniors and everything. That is where I think I grew a lot bigger. So I became a little stronger. Every time I was hitting the ball, it came with more velocity. So that helped in a way.
Yeah.
So I think by then I had moved to Bangalore. I was training with Mr. CGK Bhupati. And then that gave me a lot of confidence, after winning that, title in Besant Nagar. I hadn't beaten players, which I had played there before. So suddenly this one tournament, I ended up beating everyone and beating Nitin Kirtan in the final of the tournament. And 2002, I got into the Davis Cup team. So I think juniors is a transition where you look into try and build your game and not really worry about the results. Because at the end of the day, it is the senior tour where you need to start, and the professional tour starts from there. So I think it's for the coaches, for anybody out there to really focus on their fundamentals and to focus on their strength and movement at that point in time, because that is when you learn the best and the most of it.
Yeah.
And I think, in Pune or before that, if I had somebody to really work on my movement, my singles would have definitely been a lot more higher, I feel.
Okay.
Because I know I had the game style to, match up at the highest level, but sometimes I was late by half a step, by one step, so just to get, to work on that tennis specific things is today, which is, I think, very, very important for us. And
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's pretty much, my juniors to my senior transition.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to take a clipping of this, what you said. I need to put it up on YouTube and I need to title it well. So a lot of players and parents will benefit by what you said just now. The amount of importance that you give for results early on without paying attention to development through the developmental years. It's so important. And like you said, you would have had to work on your movements at that point of time. If your aim was to be in the top 50, I'm sure you have the mental toughness, you have the serve, you have the strokes to be there. Like you said, that one little part.
I mean, I've hit with numerous players of, at a top level.
Yeah.
So, you're there when you're standing and hitting, but when I see them move, I know I cannot do that because I've never been taught that.
Okay.
So, so that is something I think as a young player is what we need to focus on more.
Okay. Especially in the formative years. Also, your game style, the way you were playing, it was an explosive style all the way through. Like you never backed out. You were just moving in and just going for your shots, which is what helped you to perform at a later age. But the thing is, like in the junior years, like that style, I'm sure is not something that would have helped you. Like you had to just. What I'm trying to say is, what gave you the confidence to stick on to the same style and not, because I'm sure many people would advise you to be a little bit more, consistent, be more safe with your stroking, but you just kept going.
I think, I had a lot of power in my strokes. Back then when I first learned tennis here in Coorg, my dad actually taught me the basics of tennis, and he just taught me one grip, was one shake hand grip, for all my strokes. So I used to hit it very flat. So it was tough for me to, the minute somebody said, try and make some balls, I just started pushing the balls. I was not being hitting through the ball or, hitting. So then I think the best way I felt confident was when I swung through the ball and I hit, more confidently. So I kept going at that style. Yes, I was very, very erratic as a junior. Even on my serve, I made a lot of double faults. I didn't really have a kick serve. Only when I went to Bangalore, Mr. CGK Bhupati worked a lot on my kick serve. I remember, him making me serve at least 200, 300 balls every single day. There has been a few times where I've framed the ball and it's gone way over the fence, not even anywhere close to the court. But having worked on it, I mean, even till today, I work on my serve. I mean, I keep telling the guys, do not work only on your weaknesses, work on your strengths as well. And today, that second serve is one of my biggest strengths in my game. It has helped me tremendously. Especially today when I'm playing doubles, I can hit every spot on the court. It's only come because of the numerous of balls I've hit in practices. And I still keep hitting every single day. And every day after practice, I make sure I serve. And that is something I want to keep. And that has really, really helped me in my game for so many years.
Fantastic. Talking about working on your serve, hitting that many serves, just serving 200, 300 serves per se is not going to make it better. You need to do it the right way, yes, of course. But can you tell us about your involvement, or what do you tell yourself when you're serving those 200, 300 serves? What kind of goals do you set for yourself, and how much focus do you do on each serve?
So I love to keep targets. Targets and constantly keep narrowing the target where I'm serving. And then I tell myself, okay, these are 10 balls. How many can I get close to the target or inside the court? And that's where I challenge myself constantly, to try and hit those spots. It's not just about hitting the wide serve or the T serve or the body serve. Constantly moving the targets, taking a few balls and seeing every single day how many I can hit.
Okay.
And that has actually helped me, develop my serve a lot more.
Okay. That involvement from the player wanting to get better, that much better, I mean, even if it's a fraction of a percentage, on each day is so much important.
Yeah, I mean, I was once, I remember, sir, like I keep saying, today, yes, my serve is my strength. I went to Monte Carlo many, many years ago, thanks to Mr. Bob Brett, who was watching a Davis Cup tie in New Delhi. He was actually coaching Japan back then. And he watched me play against Nishikori. And he actually mentioned that to someone that if I would go there, he would help me in my game.
Okay.
So I ended up going there, to his academy. And he actually worked a little bit on my serve. He told me to bring my toss back towards my body, just a fraction to help me on my serve. Even though at that point in time, I felt like I was hitting my serve extremely well. That small change from somebody, who can see that is what is making a difference, for each player. So the idea is, wherever the players are, also to understand, and for the parents especially, if they are willing to put their kids with their coaches, trust the coaches.
Yeah.
Let them coach your kid. Do not change every 1 month, 2 months to different centers. Yeah. Because one of the biggest examples, I tell them, you don't do that when they go to a school. You do not take them every month and put them in different schools.
Yeah.
So it's very similar. So if you are putting a kid in an academy, trust the coach in that academy and let him at least be there minimum 6 months before you see if there's a change, or give the chance for a coach also to make that difference. And I think that is something which I love to tell all the parents all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take another clipping of this and put it on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
It takes time for the coach to connect with the player, understand the player, see their mindset, and know, like you said, you need to understand precisely what the kid needs to work on and tell that thing, instead of like throwing information after information or trying to find all the things that the kid is doing wrong. You need to tell them exactly what they need to do to improve, to get better. Yeah.
And also, I think one thing I would love to tell, a lot of the coaches who are here today and listening is that, yes, we can take a kid to a certain level. And after that level, there is no problem if sending the kid to another academy to a better coach. You're only helping the kid develop his tennis. Don't hold the kid in your academy only just because he is developed.
Yes.
There are over the years, even all of us out there, there's always better coaches at different levels, been at a different level. So look what is better for the kid and try and give him the best opportunity to be developing as a player. And I think that is where all of us have to come together and really help the sport and help the kids.
Yeah, totally agree. And the credit for the coach who worked with the player initially is never going to go away. You're going to be his first coach. So the goal is for the player to keep going up, and you need to help him in whatever way you can.
I think you always learn something from each and every person.
Yeah.
And there is a journey, it's again, going back to the same example as the classroom. Yeah, I cannot take the same teacher or till all the way up to my university or my post graduation. I cannot take. It's every class I go, there are different teachers at different levels teaching us various different things. So similarly in tennis, it is the same thing.
Right. Totally. You were talking about your junior days and your dad and other things. So I just want to have a small thing from you. Till 21, you didn't perform. And your dad was there right through, encouraging you all the time. How was it, your relationship with your dad and his role in your career, especially during the junior years?
Suresha, the most important thing for me there was not only my dad, my mom as well. Both of them were a big support. So I think that is what made the difference. They were working as one team. If they said no together, they would say no. I mean, if they said no, they would say it together. If they said yes, they would say it together. So they made sure that their side, they always helped me in wherever I went. And they said, have short goals. I mean, I see in a question where it says, what your advice on to break mental blocks?
Mm-hmm.
And I say that is that to have short-term goals. Do not straight away look, okay, I'm going to be the national champion. I'm going to be the Grand Slam champion. It is about, let me try and become the best player in my academy. Then let me start becoming, slowly in the state. Let me do there. If I'm beating somebody 7-6, next time, let me try and beat him 6-4 or 6-3. So in terms of you're building short-term goals. And I think that is where it makes a big difference. And parents' support makes absolutely the biggest help for a kid. And when the parents are watching matches, do not coach from the stands, because the players who are playing, especially the juniors, I mean, they are fearing the parents, what they're going to say if they miss a ball, if they hit a double fault. Because the minute they hit a ball to the net, the first reaction is looking straight at the father or the mother. And as parents, if they have negative signs showing to the kid, he's already going to be fearing more, and his game is not going to be, he's going to find it much harder to play a match. So instead of that, if parents are constantly encouraging, and after the match, if the parents want to talk to them, let them ask open-ended questions where the kid can ask and answer back in a special way, not just say, why did you serve in a double fault at this point? Or, in terms of say, how did you feel on the court? What was it difficult? What did the opponent do better? What you could have done better? So some open-ended questions where the kid is talking, and that will really help, the kid next time he's playing a match.
Absolutely wrong. A lot of clips are going to go into YouTube.
No problem.
Okay, we'll answer one last question, and then we are running out of time. What's the major difference you found between Indian tennis and coaching others? Now, we know that you are a homegrown champion. Your training, everything was done in India, and you are a world-class performer. So you are the right person to answer this. So you got the question?
Yeah, I got the question, and I think Indian tennis coaching is at a very, very high level. We need to trust the coaches. That is what the main key is. Right now we have access, worldwide, we keep watching. But the knowledge we have here in India is very, very high. And as, players, if we start trusting the coaches and always look to move up the ladder and go to a tennis center and go to make your game better, and that will really help. Like I said, earlier, that is something which is, and the movement is the number one thing we have to develop in India, and I don't see it at all. A lot of academies I've seen, it is not enforced as much. Tennis specific training, which is very, very important. And for parents also, they look at it and say, oh, okay, let him play more tennis. Fitness today don't want. I think the coaches, the parents, all, even though tennis is an individual sport, I think all of us have to come together. It's still a team sport when the player plays, whether it's parents, it's coaches, they all are together at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Even when Federer wins his Grand Slam, it's not just him. It is the entire team which is winning, because all of them are there who work in hours and hours and hours around the kid to build the kid where he is today, or where that person is today. And, that's something we have to learn from. And just having more tournaments in India, I think, will make a change eventually.
Totally.
I think that is something which will enhance players to constantly develop and get better from India.
Yeah, absolutely. The junior circuit and the domestic circuit is fantastic right now. It has built up so much, and
I think it's a good example. What we take, if we look at cricket, it's such a great structure there, from the junior all the way to the senior. That's why we have so many. It's a similar example. If we have it in every sport, I think we'll just build more champions, because we have the talent. We have extremely wonderful kids, who wanting to learn tennis. Now I think it's up to all of us to really build a good system and a structure to, get tennis to the next level.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Rohan. That was like a very honest and very, forthcoming answers for everything. And like I said, I'm going to put up a lot of these videos on YouTube. I have to make clippings first so that people can just take the information that they want.
Thank you so much, Suresh.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think if we need to do something to promote whatever you spoke today, because a lot of when it comes from us, it is not received very well, because they feel that we are a wasted interest here. When it comes from someone like you, the information will go directly to them. So thanks a lot.
I 100% believe we have everything here in India to build champions. We just have to guide them the right way.
Yeah.
But thank you, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it was wonderful being here, and again, great initiative by you all to have started this. I know Sai Sonipat also has been a huge part, doing this. So thank you guys, and let's really develop tennis and champions from India.
Thanks a lot, Rohan.
Thank you,
and
sir.
You're doing your bit, and I wish you all the best with your academy, and of course with your tennis that's coming up. With you're partnering Shapovalov. I don't know if you're going to continue doing that, or you're going to change partners. We don't know.
I mean, there was one day. I'll tell you a funny story. I was in Stuttgart. Sorry, I'm taking a couple of minutes.
Okay. No.
I was in Stuttgart, and I was practicing with Shapovalov, and there was Alex de Minaur, and there was one more Australian player. And suddenly I'm sitting there having water, and four of us on the court. And I'm telling myself, these guys are 19, 20 years younger than me. And I'm saying, what am I doing here? Am I doing something? Should I really be on the court with them? But I mean, now to watch these guys, I mean, firsthand, I've seen the way Denis Shapovalov moves on court. It is something else. I keep telling him, if I even tried that, I would probably break my ankle or break my knee, doing something like that. I mean, but, I think that is what he has learned it from such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, something which is wonderful.
So, thanks a lot for being here with
much.
us, Rohan. It was wonderful talking to you, and I'm sure all the coaches would have gained a lot of information through this.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for
a lot,
being here.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Himanshu, can you bring Balachandran and Chelston Pinto onto the panel list, please? So that was a fantastic interaction with Rohan. It's really so amazing that all these players are so much willing to come forward and share all the information, all the knowledge that they have for the generations to come up. I don't know if it's some kind of a patriotism, or is it something that you develop as a player that you want to give, whatever it is. With Yuki yesterday, with Nandan the first day, and Rohan today, it has been a phenomenal interaction. Amazing. So welcome, Balachandran, again. You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself. Hello, Chelston.
I think I'm okay.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. I heard a lot about you through Balu and Rohan, and I can't wait to hear your presentation.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
I wish you all the very best. And
thanks.
Balu, can you take over from here, introduce Chelston, and then go on with the proceedings?
Sure, Suresh. Thank you. And
bye-bye.
Namaste to all of you. Good morning, Chelston. I'll introduce you to the attendees, and then the floor is all yours from there on. Rohan already gave a brief intro of Chelston to all of you. As he said, he was a former professional footballer. He played for Karnataka and many other clubs in India. He still looks a footballer. I mean, we can easily mistake him for a current footballer as well. He's as fit as that. Moving on, when he decided to take up, become a strength and conditioning coach, he has decided to do the certifications, and he has certifications from NESTA and Australian Strength and Conditioning Association's ASCA Level 2 certification as well. He's also contributed for the Journal of Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. Present, he's a co-founder of Rapid Sport Fitness Gym in Bangalore, which trains high-performance athletes. He works with athletes from multiple sports, including tennis. And he's been working with RBTA for the past couple of years. Personally, I worked with him, so I know what he contributes and what he brings to tennis. And today, he'll be speaking to all of us and giving us an insight into fitness for tennis. And like Rohan mentioned earlier, it's a very specific requirement, and Chelston is going to enlighten us with this presentation. Welcome, Chelston.
Thank you, sir. Well, good morning to everybody. Thank you, Balu sir, for that introduction and for giving me the opportunity to present here. Big thank you to Rohan as well for getting me into the sport first, and really backing me to do what I was brought in to do. Let me just share the presentation screen with you all first. All right, I hope it's visible to everybody. Okay. Big thank you to Sai and Aita as well for organizing this for all the coaches. I think it's a great initiative, and I'm really happy to be here. As Rohan mentioned, I've only been in the sport for the past 2 years, so it's been a great experience. It's been fulfilling because I think tennis as a sport is physically very, very demanding. And to be honest, even though I've been in the sports circuit since I was really, really young, tennis is something that I've not experienced as a player. So initially, it did have I did have my challenges, but I think as and when you spend more time on court, and I did plenty of that in the past 2 years, you tend to understand more, and you can really research as to what exactly has been happening. You can there are times that you have to try something different, but at the end of the day, I think you have to always review what the output is, and that's what is really, really important. Right. So today I'll just be speaking about fitness for tennis. All right. So I'll take you through the content of my presentation. First of all, we'll just go through what exactly is strength and conditioning. All right. The energy systems that we use. Rohan had just mentioned that he was very explosive when he was young. So what energy system was he using back then? What energy system do you require when you're playing doubles, and so on and so forth? We'll discuss the long-term athlete development plan, just an overview of it, fitness requirements for tennis, which would be the major part of our presentation, And towards the end, I'll also show you as to how I handle the injury management on a personal level, and it could give you some input as well. So first, to get started, like Balu sir mentioned yesterday, there's not really going to be interaction here because we're all online. But let me just see if, one second. Okay, okay, we can't really use the chat. I can't see the chat here. All right, never mind. My first question was going to be, do you think fitness is important for tennis? I think more or less today, everyone's on the same page. Yes, fitness is important. Well, to be honest, when I first started off 2 years ago, I met a lot of parents and a lot of athletes themselves who didn't really believe in fitness. And obviously, I'm talking about personal experience here. But I think once the athlete really gets to know what you're bringing in, and the adaptation to a specific exercise or movement, that's when they really trust you and trust the process. So I think that as a strength and conditioning coach is my first job, to get the athlete and get their parents on board, to make them understand what exactly is, why exactly we're doing what we're doing. Obviously, everyone's in there to play. When you join an academy, the first thing, that crosses your mind is to play tennis, right? But how can you enhance that tennis performance is through the other work that you do. That is fitness, your nutrition, your mental training, and so on. All right, so that brings me up to the first topic. What is strength and conditioning? So strength and conditioning, on SNC, is the practical application of sports science, evidence-based research, and philosophy of exercise to enhance movement quality, right? I think a lot of you have just heard the interview just now, and Rohan kept mentioning movement quality, and that's one quality I think every tennis player needs to work on. And in case you want to move, or in any case you want to move on to the next level, movement quality is really essential for you, right? So obviously, as I said, practical application of sports science is required. Evidence-based research is required, and doing the exercise correctly. So the physiology of exercise. So those 3 points are important to note down. Next, we come up to the fitness requirements for tennis. All right, so you can use the chat over here to let me know if there's anything else that you think is required for tennis apart from this. I'll start with strength. So there's strength, there's power, there's endurance, there's flexibility and mobility. I've clubbed that into one. There's coordination and balance, which I've clubbed into one. And there's speed and agility. So you can use the chat to just think about any other aspect of fitness that you think is important for the sport. All right. I think everyone's on board with, okay, recovery. Someone said recovery. Very true. So recovery is actually the first thing that we're going to speak about. So moving forward, I want to speak about adaptation first. So adaptation, the body will adapt to stresses that are appropriately applied. The challenging part is trying to design a training program that overloads the athlete's body without causing overtraining or overuse injuries, right? So when you use any of these fitness requirements for tennis, all right, when you're training this fitness requirement, the body has to adapt to it, all right? After the adaptation phase is when the body gets some form of, say if you're working strength, after you finish the strength phase, all right, the body adapts to that strength, and once the recovery phase is done, then that's when you receive super compensation. So in my next slide, I'll take you through what is super compensation. So during and after an intense session, there is a breakdown of muscle fibers and depletion of naturally occurring substances in the body, leaving the body and nervous system in a state of fatigue, right? From the state of fatigue, the body begins to rebuild itself through rest, to rebuild the muscle fibers and nervous system back to the original level. The period from fatigue to baseline level is known as compensation, what I just spoke about. If an athlete allows for proper recovery from the initial fatigue to the next workout, this is when he will achieve super compensation, right? So this is what we want to achieve in every training session in a periodized plan. So if you see the diagram over here, training, the workload shocks versus recovery, the super compensation effect. So figure 1, if you can see the straight line that is there in the center, all right? So that is the basic line as to when the athlete is starting his fitness or the athlete is starting his training level, right? So that's the level he's at. Now, if you see the dotted black line, that's where the training happens, right? When fatigue happens, what happens is performance drops. Every time fatigue takes place, performance drops, which is required, right? You want to load the body. So from the baseline, so this is the baseline, all right? When there's performance happening, all right, when you're training or load, there's a downward slope. So this downward slope, all right, once you stop there, you allow recovery, right? So that's by the end of the session, say if you have about 12 hours to your next session. So you allow recovery. And in this instance, the recovery is just above the baseline. So if you can see the alphabet A, that's the amount of super compensation that has happened to this particular athlete, right? Now, if you go take into consideration the red line, again, the athlete starts from the baseline. From the baseline, there is training which happens. So fatigue happens and the performance drops, all right? So once that performance drops, so once fatigue kicks in, you stop the session. After you start the session, maybe it could be 6 hours after, it could be 12 hours after, all right? It could be 24 hours after. So in this case, what happens is recovery is all the way up. If you see the line B, all right? So that's where super compensation is happening, right? Why? Because there was fatigue through loading, and then after loading, there was sufficient amount of rest, or the recovery methods used was really good, and that's why there's super compensation. So when the athlete comes into training the next day, he's improved, or if the athlete comes into the session the next week, he's improved quite a bit because of the loading that happened the previous week. Now, if you see the third instance, where you train really, really, really hard, all right, it's the red dotted line. This instance is where you train really hard throughout the day or throughout the week, and the athlete just about manages to reach his base level at the end of the day, or at the end of the session, or at the end of the week. Now, over here, there's no compensation that has happened. So what is happening there is maybe you build energy systems, okay? Maybe you've built endurance, but you've not really built, or you're not really taking your performance up to the next level, right? And this is an important stressor in tennis, because tennis is a sport that is practiced every day, probably 5 or 6 times a week, and the load is quite a bit. So it's up to us to be able to know where to draw the line and how to actually periodize each plan, right? So periodization in itself is a topic which is very broad. So I won't really go towards periodization too much, but just to give you an overview, periodization is a plan that you create for a particular season. Now, I know tennis is a sport played throughout the year, especially in the developing stages. There are tournaments that are there throughout the year, and athletes at the end of the day want to go out there and play because they want to improve their ranking. But what is the best way to do it, right? As Rohan mentioned, and I heard Yuki mentioning the same thing yesterday. At the developing stage, I think what's more important is to think about your future and not really what the present situation is, right? You're training, you're putting in the hard work, you're putting in effort in the movement mechanics, because you want to do well in the future. You don't want to get injured in the future. You want to make sure that you're really strong for the future, right? So that's where periodization is very important. So when you take into periodization, there are 3 different cycles. There's a macro cycle, there's a mesocycle, and there's a microcycle, right? A macro cycle is usually a big cycle, maybe throughout the season. A microcycle is ideally a 1-month plan, and a mesocycle is a 1-week plan, right? So here, if you just see towards the right side of my screen, of your screen, there's performance. Performance can decrease if training is too hard, or recovery and super compensation have not been planned, right? So the theory, what I just explained on the left side, if that's not planned, then this is what your sessions will look like. So if you see Monday or week 1, all right, the diagram starts here, and then there's a downward curve throughout, right? But ideally, how do you want it to be? You might want a downward curve, but at some point of time, you want that curve to come up. Here, there's way too much of fatigue. So when there's fatigue, the regression comes through. The body switches off. There's lack of motivation. players get injured, there's overuse, there's overtraining, right? So this is something that we need to avoid using a good periodization method. Okay, this brings me to the next topic, which is energy systems. Now, energy systems, I'll explain it in a very basic manner because I know for sure most of you over here know about it, but just to give you more insight into the details of energy systems. Okay, so I got a few questions here, and we'll address the questions all together in the end, but let me just see if anything is very relevant right now. How to increase strength and flexibility, how to overcome. So how to increase strength and flexibility is a very broad question. If it's specific to something, maybe I can speak about it, but how to increase strength is by loading, as I said earlier, and to ensure that the overcompensation or the super compensation happens, right? And that's when the strength will increase. Flexibility at the end of the day is something that I will come to towards the end. How to overcome and fasten the recovery, I will come to. And how do I know whether it is overtraining or it's adequate or it's light? So this would come, this is a good question. How do I know whether kid is overtraining or it's adequate or it's light? So that is something that you'll have to consider, making sure that you do some athlete monitoring. Obviously having a strength and conditioning or a fitness coach will help in this perspective. There are many ways to do it. One is heart rate. GPS is something that we've not really started using in tennis, but in most other sports we use it. But I think when you do the assessment for the athlete at the start of the program, you know what level the athlete is at, right? And for that particular athlete, you try and build up a program where you say, okay, in 3 months when we do the next assessment, this is where the athlete needs to be, and that's how you tend to monitor the load and say, okay, this is right, and this might be too much, and this would be too less. Coming back to the energy systems. Okay, so the body performance requires work, and work requires energy. It's as simple as that. A molecule called ATP, that's the adenosine triphosphate, is the energy currency of the body. Right? So just remember this term called ATP. There are 3 main energy systems which exist in the muscle cell. And these energy systems, you need to replenish it to actually have the energy, right? So the 3 energy systems are phosphagen system. It's also called the ATP-PC system. Then you have the glycolytic system, and then the oxidative system. How many of you have heard of this term called aerobic and anaerobic? You can just type it out in the chat. Just say Y for yes, N for no. All right, great. A lot of you have heard of of aerobic and anaerobic. So just to put it in very simple terms, okay, the first 2 energy systems, that's the phosphagen system and the glycolytic system, is an anaerobic system. All right. The third system, that is the oxidative system, is an aerobic system. Now, these energy systems are very, very important for you to understand when you want to program, say, a tennis session or a fitness session or a strength session, right? So what you can do is, try and understand these terms and then try and connect to them when I go to the fitness requirements of tennis. Okay, so I'll just explain each of these systems. First, let me just explain, I think a couple of you said you're not too sure about aerobic or anaerobic. So I'll just explain what are the terms, what are these terms and what do they mean. So anaerobic is something where your heart rate is high and you're not able to breathe consistently. Like now what I'm doing, I'm breathing and I'm speaking to you. So I'm working my aerobic system, right? So aerobic system is something where the heart rate is at a constant pace, where you're not really working any explosive movements. Anaerobic is more of explosive movements, more of sprints. You feel sometimes the burning sensation on your chest. You find it hard to breathe. So those are the anaerobic systems, right? Just to give you an example, if you have to sprint 20 meters, or for example, when you're playing tennis, if you have to move from baseline to baseline, or from one side of the court to another side of the court, when you're sprinting, that's the anaerobic system that you're using. Aerobic system is when you're planning to do an endurance session and you run for about 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and so on and so forth, right? So now just going deep down into each energy system, the first one is the phosphagen system. Over here, this is where rapid movements are involved. So all your plyometric movements, all your power movements, just, you know, the quick steps, say if you're a doubles player, the front and back, moving front and back, your acceleration, deceleration as a singles player, all of that comes into the Phosphagen system, right? So anytime when you're training between 1 second to about 30 seconds, you're using your Phosphagen system, right? And athletes need to build this system by training it consistently. The second system is called the glycolytic system. So this system is primarily a mix of aerobic system and anaerobic system. It's both put into one, I can say, right? So in an activity level, which, say for example, now if I'm sprinting, all right, I tell an athlete to, you know, just do 10-meter shuttle sprints for 3 minutes. Now for 3 minutes, it's impossible for that athlete to sprint at 100%. Right? We all have to reach that conclusion that no, the athlete cannot do it. It's inhuman to expect an athlete to sprint 100% for 2 or 3 minutes continuously over 10-meter distance, right? So maybe the first 20 or 30 seconds might be the Phosphagen system that he's using. The second system that he'll use is, once the Phosphagen system burns out, he'll move down to the glycolytic system, right? Now the glycolytic system is strength endurance. It could be power movements, but movements which have passed that 1 minute mark. So anything between, say, 30 seconds to 1 minute up to 2 minutes falls under the glycolytic energy system. Now, once you further pass that, you move into the oxidative system. As I mentioned earlier, say when your heart rate is stable, you know, when you're able to breathe normally, that's when you move into the oxidative system. So in terms of your nutrients and what you eat as well, most of your carbohydrates is consumed during the first stage. That's your Phosphagen system. All right. Secondly, glycolytic system also consumes your carbohydrates and proteins. And oxidative system is where even your fats are involved. Now, just a question for you: where do you think, or in tennis as a sport, which system is used? Maybe you can, you know, a couple of you can just type it out on the chat box. Which system do you use? You can just type 1, 2, 3. 1 is ATP PC, 2 is glycolytic system, and 3 is oxidative system. If you think it's 1 and 2, then type 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3. You can just. All right. So some of you say ATP, some of you say all oxidative, 2 and 3. Okay, just think about it as to which system is used while you play tennis. 1 and 2. All right. A lot of you have been saying 1 and 2. All actually, okay. All right, great. Okay, that's good. It's got you thinking. Okay, so if I have to break this down into a sport, now I'm obviously giving you input based on the maximum amount of research that's out there. But again, all of this, SNC as a course itself, it depends from athlete to athlete. It is not the same for everyone. It's just a broad overview that I'm giving you. So ideally for a tennis match, a singles match, you use 70% of your Phosphagen system. That is 1. All right. For your glycolytic system, you use 20%. And your aerobic system, that's your oxidative system, you use 10%. Right. So most of your time that you're playing on court is spent using the first system. That's the ATP PC. So you're trying to be as explosive as possible. Right. So if you see the better players in the world are the ones who are very explosive, are the ones who recover really quick and can produce those explosive bouts over a number of periods of time, right? See, tennis again is very challenging because in other sports you would say the explosive systems would last about 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. Tennis could go anything between 3 to 6 hours, right? And that's where fitness is so very important, and not just fitness as a random routine, but as a periodized and programmed routine. Again, most of these energy systems cannot be worked during competition. It has to be worked during the off season and the pre-season. So I'd like to just give you an input about periodization again as to how an international or an elite athlete would program himself. And that's something I think that we need to bring in even for the younger athletes or athletes at our academy. At some point of time, we have to find a duration around the year, around the calendar, saying that okay, none of the athletes should ideally go out to play, because this is when you're going to work on your energy systems. This is when you're going to work on injury prevention, and this is where your fitness is going to go ahead to the next level for you to play tournaments in the rest of the, say, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, or 9 months, right? So you have to have an off-season, a minimum 4 weeks, I would say, an off-season time. Again, I understand that 4 weeks is a lot of time for tennis, but ideally, if you can, even have 2 weeks, it's still good. So you have a 2-week off-season plan, which is a generalized fitness plan, right? In a generalized fitness plan, I mean, you're not really doing too much of tennis specific, but you're trying and doing more raw running, more hypertrophy. So you put on strength, making sure that your range of motion improves. So as someone had mentioned earlier, how do you improve flexibility? Again, flexibility is very difficult to improve during the season, and flexibility is a process. It's just like strength. How do you improve strength? You improve your flexibility. And now, why do you have to improve your flexibility is another question that I will answer, in the later slides. So just coming down to the energy system a table that we have over here. All right. So if you can see, there's duration of activity and dominance of energy system. So if you take the black line is your first energy system. That's the Phosphagen system, right? So if you see, the athlete starts at 100%, and within 30 seconds, he's out, all right, out of energy, out of breath. So that is basically a Phosphagen system. Now, better athletes will recover from this bout faster, all right? The athletes that are still developing might not be able to go 100% for about 30 seconds. They might go 100% for about maybe 5 seconds, 8 seconds, or 10 seconds. And they might take longer to increase or to, get back to a nominal level. But a better athlete, he will start at 100%. He can go all the way up to 30 seconds. And after 30 seconds, he'll need a short break just so that he can recoup and start again. And he can go, again in the next minute, he can go 100%. Now, if you see the second line, that is the blue line. Okay, that's the second system. That's the oxidative system. So here, the athlete starts at 0. He goes all the way up to 100. All right. And by the end of the second minute, he goes down. Right. So this is where you use both the systems, the first system as well as the third system. And the oxidative system is where you start at 0 and there's a gradual increase in pace. So that's where, you use the aerobic system, which is least used in tennis. There's another question here. What is the difference between power and strength? I'll answer that. All right, so we'll move forward. I hope everyone's good till here. Okay, so this is where I'll answer your questions as to, when can an athlete start lifting weights? What is the ideal age? How do you train young athletes, developing athletes, athletes who are competing, and so on? Again, long-term athlete development as a subject is pretty broad, and I'm just going to give you an overview of it. I'm just going to check the chat again now. Just getting notifications. Okay, I got another question. Is functional training useful for tennis? Absolutely. Functional tennis is probably the most used form of fitness for tennis. Okay, so here's a long-term athlete development. I'm sure most of the coaches here have gone through it, and some of you have even mastered it in a way. I'm just here to not really talk about the technical aspect of it or the tactical aspect of it. It's more towards fitness and how the body is developing from a young age and how you can take it up to the next level. A lot of inputs given by Rohan in his interview had said that movement efficiency is the key when you're growing up. Yuki yesterday mentioned that he would have done a lot better in terms of injury management if he had got personal assistance at a stage where he needed it. So I'll take you through all those stages, and you'll get a fair idea. So if you start right at the bottom, okay, that's the physical literacy stage, or the fundamental movement skill. Okay, so your active start, you don't really have to worry about the active start, because that is more to do towards the parents, to make sure the kids are active, making sure that technology is not taking advantage of. These days you see a lot of kids even below the age of 2, which highly should be unacceptable, that they are using technology to distract them or to pass their time. Again, it's the parents' call over here, but ideally you don't want to use technology at such a young age, right? At least till a minimum age of 2. I know some kids don't watch TV till about 3 or 4, but I would say a minimum age of 2. Fundamentals. So when we come to the next stage, fundamentals. So this is ideally the age between 6 to 10. Okay. Again, I'm just giving you a broad aspect of this, broad learning of this. So fundamental stage is when you try and develop the motor skills of the athlete, right? You're not really teaching them tennis. You're teaching them to have fun, teaching them teamwork, teaching them discipline, coordination, making sure that they have balance, there's stability in what they're doing, and at the end of the day, it's fun. So everything has to be fun in this stage between the age of 6 to 10. During this stage, I feel the other thing that is necessary is not give too many instructions. It's more of follow the leader. You show them what to do, or you appoint a leader, and let it just flow, right? In terms of coaching, all we have to make sure is that they're not getting injured. There's no overuse of a particular muscle, because you'll see a lot of kids who come with abnormal postures, I would say, or imbalances. Say one of the most specific ones is shoulders coming inwards. All right. So these are things that we'll try and fix at this stage. But again, we're trying keeping it as much fun as possible, rather than make it anything to do with technical or tactical stuff. At this stage, between 6 to 10, the girls and the boys will be at on par in terms of physical capabilities. In fact, I would say in most cases, the girls would have more balance and stability in what they're doing as compared to the boys, right? So the boys mature a little later as compared to the girls. So between 6 to 10, this is where girls, in most cases, have advantages, right? When we move on to the next stage, so the fundamentals and learning to, fundamentals is 6 to 10. I would say learning to train is between 10 to 14. So between this age is when you teach them a little bit more about tennis, okay? You can get into a little more tactical work, not really tactical work, but technical work. And in terms of fitness as well, this is when I would say the first assessment is required, between the age of 10 to 14. Now, when we do assessments, I'll come back to what assessments we do. But when we do assessments, we ideally want to do assessments periodically. You don't want to do assessments too many times throughout the year, because that bores the athlete, and it doesn't give the strength and conditioning coach or the fitness coach or the tennis coach enough time to work on the athlete. But you want to do it at least once in 3 to 4 months. So maybe 3 times a year is a good number to have. Right. So during this learning to train phase, this is when they will learn the correct mechanics of running, because in fundamentals, you're teaching them to land, you're teaching them stability, balance, coordination in the form of games. Here, you're teaching them in terms of mechanics. They need to know the right form of running. They need to know how to squat, how to sit, how to stand up, right? How to cross over, how to shuffle, different movements that the game, the game or any specific sport would require. The next stage would be training to train stage. So this stage is, I think, the most crucial stage of an athlete, and has to be handled with a lot of care, with a lot of research again, and with a lot of reviewing of what you're actually doing, what you're actually programming, what the outcome is of each session, or what the actual outcome is of every week of training. Right. So during this stage, just to give you a difference between the boys and girls, what happens is the boys would develop muscle during this stage. So they'll grow faster. The height, they increase in terms of the height as well. So there is more power. But now, how do we curb this power? Okay. So this is the stage where there are maximum number of injuries in growing athletes. And for a woman or for a girl, this is the stage where they leave sport, because there's too much of stress, there's too much of injuries that are caused due to overloading or wrong mechanics that are taught. Okay, so for the boys, we need to first curb that power. So when I'm doing that assessment, which is very, very crucial, I will know as to, okay, now this guy is grown, his muscles are growing, his foot size is growing. I need to make sure that, okay, everything is aligned. There's no imbalances in his shoulder, because these imbalances that happen at this age, that is the training to train stage, is what carries over, keeps carrying forward, and will lead to a big injury at a later stage. Sometimes it might not happen right away, but in the future, there are more chances of it happening, and it's very difficult to correct in the future once the athlete is already grown, or once he's already into a periodized plan, or he's already, his body is adapted to strength training, or his body is adapted to something, right? So this is also the stage where, I'm sure tennis technique is changed, because the learning to train stage is when they're still kids. Training to train is, a little higher, and training to compete is even higher. So this is when techniques change because of height differences. Sometimes, the limb lengths are different, and, players tend to feel uncomfortable because of that growth spurt, right? And this is where the coaches need to really take action and say, okay, for this athlete, this needs to be done. And for this athlete, this needs to be done. So as an academy as well, if you're training as part of the academy, I think all eyes need to be at players at this level, because this is the crucial stage. Now, for a girl's point of view, this is the stage, just say when they're reaching or before menstruation, that they develop more fat percentage, right? Up to this stage, the fat percentage of the boys and girls are normally the same. So the training can be same, energy systems used and trained can be the same, right? When you're training energy systems from fundamentals, you try and keep them in the aerobic range as much as possible, because if you take them up to the phosphagen range, they won't last there. Moreover, it's risky, right? So until you come up to the training to train stage, don't really do too much of power. Don't really do too much. First, teach them the fundamentals. How do you land? How do you jump? How do you skip? How do you move from side to side? Right? Those are more important than actually teaching them power or tennis-specific drills, right? In terms of fitness. So for the girl, for a girl female athlete, there is fat percentage that increases during the training to train or training to compete stage. So this was anything between, I would say 12 to 18 years, right? So we have 14 to 18 years. So during this stage, we cannot give them the same amount of load that, the boy at that age is taking. So be skeptical about that. Make sure that your plans are, periodized accordingly, because the fat percentage increases, usually the hip increases. What happens when the hip increases is ideally the glutes need to get stronger. If the fat percentage increases, then there's more load on your ligaments. So say, for example, knees. ACL injuries during this period are very, very common, especially amongst women. Now, it's happening amongst women because that fat percentage has increased in them, and the body or the ligament, so specifically the knee, cannot take that load, the excess fat percentage, right? And there's nothing that the women can actually do about it. They still have to maintain a balanced diet. They still need to train, but train more systematically, right? Just running and improving those energy systems will not really make a difference. In this case, what will really make a difference is your strength training, right? How strong can you get your lower body, right? To control or to ensure that the load that you've put on or the weight that you put on is managed well by the lower body, right? So strength training is really important. Mobility training is really important. Flexibility training is really important. Stability training is really important, right? So during this stage, we have to refocus on all that we focus on the fundamental stage. Why? Because the kids have grown, their bodies have changed, and they still need to adapt to what their bodies have become at this particular time, right? So again, training all the aspects that are important for fitness, that is your strength, your speed and agility, your mobility, your stability, your balance and coordination, all that has to be focused on in a more systematic way, in a more tennis-specific way in the training to train and training to compete stage. And then you proceed with the training to win. Again, from the training to compete stage to the training to win stage. So training to win stage is ideally above 20. There are not too many athletes who survive till then. Why? Because athletes or their parents want immediate success, right? So I get a lot of, I'm sure all of us get a lot of, inquiries saying that, okay, I'm going to put my son or daughter or put the girl and guy or the boy into the academy, and I want them to win in probably 6 months, in 12 months. But I think it's up to us to really make the athlete understand, as well as their parents understand, that it's a process, right? In the process, if you're winning, that is great. But what the end goal needs to be is to perform at the senior level, right? That's where, that's where it really matters. That's where all the work that you've put on from that active stage or fundamental stage is really going to pay dividend. right? Because as you grow older, there's not too much you can really improve on in terms of in specific aspects. So in terms of movement, efficiency, all this has to be worked between that learning to train stage to learning to compete stage. Because when you're training to win, that's when the tactical work comes in. That's when your tennis coach plays a huge role, right? The fitness coach, the physiotherapist, all that is support system to just back you to be able to perform well on the court and to make sure that you're performing at a high level, right? So this is just a broad overview of the long-term athlete development. One common question that I keep getting, or most of us will keep getting, is strength training okay for my kid who is 8 years? Yes, it's okay. It's okay for anyone above 6 years. So, the fundamental stage, 6 to 10 years, you can do strength training, but ensure that strength training needs to be done correctly. It's not a game, right? Speed and agility can be a game. You can, in terms of just movement, you can make them play games, but strength training is not a game, right? So if the athlete can connect to me, if he can take advice, then yes, strength training is applicable for him. If he cannot, then no, it's not. Right. So I think the maturity of the athlete also is important, right? And this is where, again, I think the communication plays an important role, something that Balu sir had covered yesterday. Coming into the second stage, strength training for between 10 to 14. Yes, that's when you start your body weight training. If your motor skills are really good at the fundamental stage itself, then learning to train, you can introduce resistance. Now, what is resistance? Using mini resistant bands for your lower body, using bands for your upper body, just ensuring that there's stability in what you're doing, ensuring that you're activating your core. So these are things that you can learn when you're learning to train. Now, when are you ready to lift weights is another question, and there's no specific age for that, right? It could be at the age of 10, it could be at the age of 12, it could be at the age of 18, right? With regard to ages, there are three training ages I can say. Okay, one is your biological age. So your age when the number of years you've been playing the sport. The chronological age, that is the age that you have been training, and then one is your actual age, that is your biological age. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. Your biological age is the age that you are. Okay. There's a training age in terms of your musculoskeletal system, right? I might be 15, but maybe my body is producing force like I'm someone, or my muscles are built as I'm 18 or 19, right? So the other training age is when the number of years you've been playing. So someone who comes to you at the age of 14 and who doesn't have the mechanics, he needs to start from the fundamental stage or learning to train stage. Even though he's at the training to train age, he has to start below, because you have to learn the fundamentals of how to land, okay, how to move. Your movement efficiency needs to improve, and only then you can learn or you can do tennis specific fitness, right? So that's how you scale up towards becoming a high performance athlete. Again, you can connect whatever I just said with regard to LTAD when we come back to the tennis requirements of fitness. So here's a short video of landing mechanics. So this again, before someone learns to jump up, he needs to first understand how to control his weight, right? So I'm just going to play this again. It's a single leg landing. Obviously, first you start with double leg, then you go with single leg, then you jump front, you jump sideways, you jump in different directions. So before you get to strength training, all these mechanics need to be really good. You need to be able to run well. Your posture needs to be good, like maintain a straight back, neutral spine, I would say. Ensuring that your body mechanics are fit or are okay to start training. Like your body weight training is good. You can do push-ups. You can do at least one pull-up, right? So once you can do all of that, then it's the right age for you to start strength training. I'm just checking a few questions if anything is appropriate for right now. Okay, I think we'll continue. So coming to fitness requirements of tennis, for tennis, the first thing is strength training. Okay, so this is, I think, the most important, the broadest factor that is used as part of fitness. What is strength training? So, or why exactly would you require strength training? The tennis player who can apply their strength most effectively are the ones who can hit the ball hardest and serve fastest. This is why power as well as strength is important, right? And you need obviously joint stabilization in your rotator cuff. That's your shoulders, your important ligaments that are your hip. Your hip complex, and then as well as your ankle, around your ankle area. So just before I give you more details on strength training, I'd like to go back to the energy systems, all right, and give you three types. When you're playing tennis, what are the three types of, like, when are you using these energy systems, just so that you get a better idea, and then you can apply it for all of these requirements. So type 1 is emphasis on aerobic endurance. So what is an aerobic endurance? It is it is when the heart rate is at is maintained, you can say, right? You're breathing normally, you can speak when you're training, right? So that gives you an indication of aerobic endurance. So when you put two players on either side of the court and they're just playing, they're just hitting. So say for example, cross-court rallies with a change in direction after each second or third stroke, that is when they're emphasizing on their aerobic endurance. So that's usually a warm-up, right? When the emphasis is on aerobic and anaerobic endurance, so that's when baseline returns with service. So you're doing the same thing that you did earlier, but this time it's with service, and the players must have a rally of 3 points of 3 shots before the point is live. That ensures high density of work. So that's when the energy system is you're using the aerobic as well as the anaerobic system. And when you're using only the anaerobic system in terms of training is when there's a coach-centered drill. So say, for example, the coach feeds the ball to the athlete, and he hits about, say, 10 or 15 balls, moving side to side, moving front and back, and moving at a rapid pace, right? So that is when you're using the anaerobic system. And post that, ideally, the tennis player would require about 20 or 30 seconds to recover before he can get back to 100%. Now, again, in terms of these kind of training, in terms of load, you recover fastest for a developed athlete or for an elite athlete or a training to compete athlete. You recover fastest from an anaerobic situation, right? The first training cycle, that is the ATP PC, right? That's when you recover faster. Yes, your heart rate is pumping. The movements in terms of strength might be a lot more rapid, but your fast twitch muscles are working much faster. But you recover faster, right? In between, that's the second cycle where you're using both the anaerobic and aerobic cycle. That's when you require more time to recover. So maybe after a session, you require at least 6 hours to recover. The aerobic system, where the session is really long, but one intensity is maintained, right? During that session, that's when you take the longest to recover. Yeah. So coming back to strength training, there's 2 types of exercises in strength training. One is isotonic exercises and one is isometric exercises. So isotonic exercises are when, I'll just give you an example, a very simple example. So say I'm doing a movement, a bicep curl. Everyone knows a bicep curl. I hope you can see my arm. So this is me keeping my arm straight, right? Now what I do is I'm flexing my arm. So what is happening to my bicep, right? My bicep, this muscle is shortening, right? So now I extend. Now it's long. Now this muscle is shortening. When the muscle shortens, all right, when there's shortening of the muscle, that's when it's the concentric phase. So under isotonic, you have concentric and eccentric. Concentric is when the muscle shortens. So ideally, what do you think you require in tennis? Do you require concentric? Do you require eccentric? Or do you require both? You can just type 1, 2, or 3 on the chat. Like, what do you think is required in tennis? Eccentric is just the opposite of concentric. So this is eccentric, this is concentric. All right, both. So most of you have said both, which is true, right? So just to take this, to give you an example, what do you require in bodybuilding? Bodybuilding, you require big muscles. So you want more contraction happening, right? You want more contraction happening. You don't really care too much of the eccentric motion. But why do you care about the eccentric motion in sport for an athlete? Is because if you're only focusing on the contraction, then the athlete at the end of the day is going to walk like this instead of walking like this. He'll walk like this, right? So that is not going to transform into him. It's not going to transform into him doing better at his sport. The whole point about fitness and strength and conditioning is do things that is going to help you in your sport, right? Even the generalized fitness that is in your off season, you're doing it to improve your sport, right? So anytime you do strength training, anytime you do speed and agility, you work on the energy system development, it needs to help in your particular sport, right? In this case, tennis. So you have to work both the concentric motion as well as the eccentric motion, right? Just to give you an insight of something else is when you work the concentric motion, right? What is happening is this is one muscle. What's the opposite muscle? The tricep, right? So now if I extend the arm, all right? So if you can just keep your arm down and extend it, okay? Extend it completely, lock the elbow. What you notice is there, your tricep is contracted, right? So when my bicep is contracted, my tricep there's an eccentric range of motion. It's long, right? But when my bicep is extended, all right, when my arm is extended, all right, this is eccentrically loaded and the tricep is concentrically loaded, right? So this is very important in terms of injury management as well, because most of the times when, say, for example, you're injured on, say, your quadricep, okay, it could be because your hamstrings are really weak, right? Now, concentric motions are used excessively when you're playing itself, right? So say, for example, in a doubles kind of a situation, you're squatting really low. You have to be low. That's what the game demands, right? If you're playing at the net, you need to be low. So that's when your muscles are contracted. But what's happening is, say, for example, in a singles game, again, maybe you're playing a lot of rallies from the baseline. You're in a quarter squat position most of the time, right? But what the game actually requires you to do is also run from side to side. Most of the points are won or lost because players don't get to the ball on time, right? So when you're decelerating, right, that's when the eccentric phase of strength is used, right? So accelerating is when you're going forward, decelerating is when you're stopping. So when you're stopping, that's when the eccentric loading comes into play, right? Isometric exercises are just holds. So your wall sit, for example, is an isometric exercise. There's no movement, it just hold. So giving you the same example, when I'm doing a bicep curl, if I'm going to keep it at 50%, that's when there's maximum muscle tension. So that's an isometric hold. If I want concentric muscle tension, then I'll hold it here. And if I want eccentric muscle tension, I'll hold it all the way down. So that's an example of the strength training methods that I use. There are lots and lots of more complex methods that are used for elite level athletes, but this is something that everyone should know and keep in mind. I'll just play a video for you so if you can see this video, it's a strength endurance session. So I'm making the athlete do about close to about 15 seconds of strength endurance. So he's just doing lunging with resistance at the back. This is a maximal strength session. Okay, so here you can see the athlete. She's lifting 1.5 times her body weight. So the athlete is 45 kg. She's 16 years of age. How do I know she's ready to lift weight? Because her mechanics are on point, right? So she's an athlete that I've been training with since she came in at the age of 11. So it's been 5 years now, and she's been strength training for the past 3 years. Now, why am I giving her, a lot of questions would be asked as to why is she lifting 1.5 times her body weight? She's so young, isn't there going to be any repercussions to that? I'll give you a simple example, okay? Now, say, for example, you're jumping, all right? Now, if an athlete jumps, say I'm 50 kgs and I'm jumping up, I'm landing on one leg. Now, my 50 kgs, and because of the impact of the jump, become 75 to 100 kgs. Will my body be able to take 75 to 100 kgs if I don't do strength training? More often than not, no, it won't be able to take it. Why? Because there's not enough of eccentric strength in my hamstring, right? If there's not enough, if my lower body doesn't have enough strength to take that load of the impact, that's when the knees will collapse. That's when the ankle will collapse, and that's when it will lead to injuries. So if you're preparing the athlete to play at a high level, yes, you will need strength training, but again, progressive strength training. She's not lifted 1.5 times her body weight over 1 month. She's done it over 3 years, right? So that's the important takeaway from this. Next, power and plyometrics. So the difference between strength and power. Strength is you're trying to increase your strength. You cannot do power without strength, right? What is power? So just to give you an example, power is the quality that is associated with speed of movement. In tennis, the emphasis is on the first step and quick change of direction. So for you to move fast towards the ball or move laterally or move front and back, you need the first step really quick, and that is power, right? These relate to the ability of the player to overcome their own body weight and then to initiate movement, right? The faster athletes do these things, the more impressive they are on court. So power training is, again, an advanced training method. You can start with bodyweight power training at an early age. That is, just learning how to jump, how to skip, how to bound, how to sprint, and how to stride, right? But in terms of plyometrics, you need to give it time and ensure that the athlete is 100% ready to take that load, and to ensure that the landing mechanics are good, the concentric power is good, because if the athlete can't jump, the jumping phase is the concentric phase. If the athlete can't jump, don't make the athlete jump. Improve the concentric phase of the strength and then make the athlete jump. All right. Now the athlete, when he or she is landing, a lot of developing athletes will say, hey, I have knee pain, I can't do this. Why they have knee pain is the eccentric power, or the muscles around the knee is not developed yet. So don't make them do those jumps. Make them do a little more strength training and resistance training before they can move to plyometrics. All right. So in terms of energy systems, okay, so the energy system most likely to be involved in tennis training using plyometrics will be the ATP-PC system, the first one, anaerobic, the first system, energy system. The system requires exercise effort to be maximal and lasts from 1 to 15 seconds ideally for a tennis-specific workout, right? The rest ratio after that would be 1:5. Say, for example, if it lasts for, say, 10 seconds, your explosive movements, then what you'll do is your rest period would be 50 to 60 seconds. Yeah, that's for optimal recovery. Now, with regard to plyometrics, or with regard to strength, you try and mix it up with what I normally do for my athletes to make sure that they're engaged during the session, to make sure that they're doing they're on point, they're alert, and it's also a thing about motivation. Doing the same thing every day is a bit disheartening, or not motivating enough. Again, it depends on the athlete. There are some athletes who will put in the grind for you, who understand the process, and there are some athletes who want to be challenged with something new, right? So I stick to the same movements. If it's speed and agility, if it's periodized over 2 or 3 weeks, I stick to that, but I add a new stimulus to it, right? So I'll just show you a video. This is Nikki Punappa. This is during his rehab stage after he won the nationals. So here I'm making him do plyometrics with the isometric hold, right? So what's happening here is I'm making the feet move fast, but the hip stability is important. Your torso rotation. After that, an athlete who's not really trained will fall over, will not be able to hold this for 3 seconds, right? So this is something that, I normally would mix when it comes to, just doing one form of training. So sometimes I would mix strength with speed and agility, sometimes plyometrics with something else. So, it just keeps engaging the players at the end of the day, the feedback is such that, okay, I'm alert. I want to give my 100% for this session. Moving on to speed and agility. A tennis player must be able to respond to different sorts of signals more quickly, move quickly with constant changes in direction in order to become a successful athlete. I think everyone agrees with that. Movement efficiency is the most important thing for tennis. Now, movement efficiency will not only come by training speed and agility, right? You have to ensure that the balance is good, coordination is good, you have strength, you have power. That's when everything will fall into place for speed and agility. Right? I don't want to touch upon too much on speed and agility because I know everyone's doing it. But here are just some videos of what I normally do in a session. So again, this is training to train or training to compete stage. The athletes, what I did in this particular scenario is they're doing speed and agility in terms of their movement. If you can see, everyone's in a quarter squat. That's where they spend maximum amount of time when they're playing. The first sudden step, all right, is when I say go, right? So they might have to move right or left, all right? They're competing with each other, which gets the best out of them. And at the end of the day, I want them to train 70% of their time in that energy system number 1. That's what they're doing. Again, it's a very advanced movement, so I wouldn't suggest doing it at the very beginning because as you can see here, the movements are very sudden. So when I say go, they're sprinting, accelerating, they're bending down to reach that cone and then decelerating. Again, these athletes have been trained over a period of time, so that's why this is doable. There has to be progress before you move into this competitive stage. Here's another example. Okay, so this is something called as reactive strength. Okay, so this is where I make them do quick movements. Again, you're training the first energy system, followed by, so what happens is when they're doing these 5 movements, the 5 repetitions of a deadlift, I'm making them do it with power. Again, the form has to be really, really good. And then drop the dumbbells and move into your shuffles, right? So here I'm seeing the movement efficiency after the energy system or after their own system is already taxed doing those 5 movements with power. Now, here's one thing I'd like you to see and notice. If you can tell me which athlete over here is a trained athlete and which athlete over here is a natural athlete, just by your instinct. All right. So if you can say, maybe you can type it in the chat. You can say white or red. So just put white or red. Who's a trained athlete over here? All right. So just watch this again. Just type out white or red. Who do you think is a trained athlete in terms of the strength and movement? Okay, let's see what you say. Some of you said red, some of you said white, red. White is natural, red, white trained. Okay, so I think it's a mixed opinion. So here's what so if you see the athlete in the white, okay, so just to give you a history, he's a bit older, he's about 23 or 24. The athlete in the red, he's a lot younger, he's 16 years of age. Now the athlete in the red, when I did his assessment, I figured out that he's a natural athlete, okay? He can move really swiftly on court. He can move, he can cover distance, he can, when you give him that stimulus, when you give him a signal, he will just move, right? So he doesn't need to be trained. Now athletes like this, ideally, he's already quick, he's naturally really fast. So I'll play the video again, just see his movement in terms of the efficiency, how he's decelerating at every cone and how his hip movements is, he's dropping the shoulder and sidestepping. It's just quality. That's something that is very hard to train. But as well as the athlete in the white, his developing stage wasn't the strongest. His mechanics are not the best, right? But at this stage, I can't take him back to fundamentals, right? I have to make do with what I have at the age of 23, 24 and try and improvise. So him, I might have to teach him, give him a few tips and tell him this is what needs to be done, that is what needs to be done. The athlete in the red, on the other hand, is still young, all right? So he has the energy, he has the speed. I don't do anything apart from ensure that he doesn't get injured. So why am I making him do the deadlift? Why am I making him do strength? Is only so that he doesn't get injured. But in terms of tips, in terms of training him, in terms of speed and agility, there's no tips. It's all natural. He continues doing what he's good at, right? Just watch his speed and agility movement here. See the sidestepping there. So I would say at the end of the day, he is very, very efficient in this particular movement. All right, so I'm running out of time. I'm sorry, everyone in the panel. I'm going to finish this in the next, say, 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. I've clubbed all this together, flexibility, mobility, stability, balance, coordination. All this is equally important. Now, how do you use this in a training system is something that I will show you as to how I do it. Why is flexibility important? Because you need range of motion as an athlete. It's as simple as that. If you're stiff, your body takes longer to recover. Yeah. In terms of mobility, I'm going to show you a video. In terms of stability, as I mentioned, right from your developing age, it's very important. Stability and balance go hand in hand. Coordination as well. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the athlete in the white, his coordination, stability, and balance were not the best. Like his mechanics were not taught to him, was not corrected at an early age. So once he's already past the age of 20, he's in his training to win stage. It's not, I can't really bring him back now and say, okay, I can train him to compete, but I cannot go back to fundamentals and train to train, right? So at this stage, I have to make do with what I get and ensure that, okay, in terms of stability, balance, and coordination, I help him out with new stimulus every day so that at the end of the day, it becomes muscle memory. But if muscle memory is built at a younger age, that's the best stage. That's the best time to do it, ideally. Even Rohan just mentioned that if you want to get faster, movement efficiency needs to get better, do it at a young stage. Once you develop, once you finish the age of 20, 21, 22, you can work on strength, you can work on power, you can work on reaction to a certain extent, but movement efficiency is going to be difficult, like real difficult, right? Here's a video of stability. So that's proprioception for the shoulder. There are two athletes there. just working on their shoulder mobility. All right, moving on to recovery. So what are the forms of recovery? As per research, to be honest, there's no one way of recovery which will help an athlete. All right, so that's something that I want to be clear about. But recovery, I would say, coming from an athlete's point of view, is more psychological than anything else. Yes, sleep is the most important factor of recovery. But apart from that, there are many other factors. There's foam rolling, there's myofascial release, there's ice baths, there's contrast baths, there's deep tissue massages, swimming, chirotherapy, cupping, lots of methods to do it. But I know for me, from a personal standpoint, I like deep tissue massages and I like ice baths. I like to get into the ice bath, so say about 3 days a week, because psychologically, when I'm in there for say about 2 minutes, I'm numb, all right? It's more for torture. Mentally, I'm switching off from everything else and just thinking as to, okay, how do I get away from this? How do I recover? Now, when I come out, I just feel lighter because maybe psychologically I'm thinking that, okay, I put my body into this, now I feel better, right? So different athletes feel different things, but I think from an academy protocol, it's good to have fixed things and to ensure that every athlete is doing it. Obviously, once you turn pro, and once the athlete has his own support system, then, you go as per what the athlete wants and what the athlete reacts to better. I'm just going to play this video of foam rolling. I think this foam rolling is essential for everybody. It's a 1-minute video. You can just watch that. I think everyone's been sitting for about 90 minutes now, so you can even stand up, move around 30 seconds, and we'll be back. Again, this is a very basic form of foam rolling. There are more intense ways of doing it as well. I have one last slide after this. Sorry. All right, so this is lower body release. There's also upper body release, which are not included in this video. All right, coming to the last, this is the last content from my side. I'll just play this video. This is about injury management and how important it is. All right, so just watch this really closely. All right, so if you watch that video closely, it's unbelievable, right? I don't know how many players in the circuit or how many players in the world would survive that kind of a movement, but Djokovic did. And it just pays dividend as to, what his physical capabilities are and how much he's worked to reach that level, right? Most players, to be honest, will not even attempt that because they wouldn't reach the ball. But the fact that he attempted it, if you see his ankle, right, both of the ankles are rolling, his knees have it's almost a full split. He shifted his body weight from the center towards the right to play the shot, and then he's recovered from that. To be honest, even if someone tried it, I don't even know how many injuries would happen at that point of time. So in terms of, again, that's the importance of flexibility and eccentric strength. Now, if he didn't have the strength, eccentric strength, he wouldn't be able to return that ball. Just flexibility wouldn't help, right? So fitness is something that you have to use as a whole. You can't just train, say for example, you just can't train one energy system. You can't just train strength. You can't just train one form of strength, right? You can't just train hypertrophy. You have to train power. You have to train reactive strength. You have to train maximal strength, right? So there are different forms of strength that you have to train, and that's where I think a fitness coach comes in and says, okay, this is how we can monitor load. This is how much you should ideally be able to train, right? This is, I think, where the team can really work together in an academy situation. And now I'd like to just bring in a few things with regard to how I plan a season for a particular academy, and in terms of how a physiotherapist is also involved. So the first things first is onboarding assessments. So this is when the player enters the academy. First thing I do is take a current state of fitness, do a fitness test. Now there are a wide range of fitness tests that you can do. Do a fitness test that you can repeat over a course of time to see improvement in the athlete. Do a fitness test which allows you to do it based on your facility. Now, if you don't have the facilities, you have to make do with what you get, right? Just ensure that everything can be measured. So I'll give you an example. Fitness test, you start off, say, for example, you do a speed test. So a speed test could be a 20-meter flying test where from 0 to 5 meters, I take a timing reading. And again, from 0 to 20 or from 5 to 20 meters, I take a timing a reading. Say, for example, I do a strength test. A strength test would be number of push-ups one can do for 60 seconds, or number of sit-ups one can do for 60 seconds for your core. If it's an advanced level athlete, maybe 3 RM or a 1 RM. So your 3 rep max for a squat, or a 3 rep max for a deadlift or a bench press. So these are things that I can keep. When the athlete comes in on day 1, on day 90, I can test him again and see as to how much he's improved, right? So similarly, you can have endurance test, maybe a 1.5 mile endurance test. Again, that endurance test, how you run that 1.5 mile is important. If you're running it on track, it's different. Your reading, your timing will be different. And if you're running on court, it will be very different, right? Also running on court, just to let everybody know, it's pretty torturous for an athlete, right? To just run 1.5 miles around, or run 1,500 kilometers around the court. It is daunting for the athlete to just around a small space to run that amount. So try and come up with new tests that you can do, right? Endurance is all about aerobic capacity. So add aerobic capacity tests that you can test again and again and again, right? You can do a flexibility test, a simple one, sit and reach. You can do a mobility test, your range of motion for your shoulders. There are plenty of tests. You can do a power test, maybe a vertical jump, maybe a broad jump, right? In terms of physiotherapy, the onboarding would be a musculoskeletal assessment. So a musculoskeletal assessment is for the physiotherapist to check the joints, the ligaments, the muscles of the particular athlete, any imbalances, any instability, pronated feet, shoulders caving in, the spine not being neutral, scoliosis, or any sort of injury that was there in the past, or any sort of alarming situation that the strength and conditioning coach needs for the rehab situation, right? And whatever we do, obviously, as I said earlier, is to have an expected outcome. So the expected outcome of this particular case is setting a benchmark for each player and reducing injuries in the shoulder and lower body, right? Next up, we go to the injury management. So under the injury management, now once I do the test, I know what the academy prevention plan is, the injury prevention plan. So I'll know whether the athlete fits into that system, right? Then I'll know how to assess the fatigue and well-being of the athlete because I've tested him, right? I'll know as to what mobility and muscle activation needs to be done, and then obviously give him suggestions as to how to release and recovery. All right. For the physio, in terms of injury management, he'll have the individual history. He'll make the rehab plan, and he'll ensure that the player should come back and report and say that, okay, in terms of any injury, how to report an injury, as simple as that. Right. Expected outcome here is making sure that the individual has a protocol to that, so that he follows that and improves for the next fitness test. Then you can come up with a conditioning plan based on what assessment was done. You can come up with a pre-training plan and a post-training plan. So here I mentioned in a pre-training plan that reaction and footwork is something that I want to work on. Specific strength is something that I'll work on. So it could be, as I said, maximal strength. It could be endurance. It could be contrast training, strength methods. Then proprioception is something that I'll want to train, and muscle activation. From a physio's point of view, again, only if you have a physio full time, you'll do the checkup, release, and taping before the athlete gets onto the court. And the expected outcome out of this is making sure that you're prepared for the day. All right. So for a fitness coach, it's important to know as to what the tennis coaches are doing on court as well. So just to have a broad idea of where they're starting. If they're starting with serves, can we do something to prep them up for the serves so that they can go all out there and improve that percentage of their serves or improve the performance of their serves? Post training, these are things that I normally do: core stability and hypertrophy, and obviously improve the range of motion. From the physio's aspect, it would be more of working on the range of motion and your release. So here I've mentioned as the expected outcome is harder sessions need to be is equal to smarter planning. And then you obviously note even the session duration. So this is just a broad aspect of what my injury management plan would be for the academy or for an individual player when they come to me. So I have, everything is noted down. Everything has to be documented, because only then you can review it, right? And only then you'll know the progress of the player. So if he's getting injured, you'll know as to why he's getting injured, because it could be his past history. It could be something that I neglected from my end, or the player would have neglected from his end, or maybe the physio has not probably done it right. Again, there's no 100% solutions, but at least over here, with this planning, we are working towards getting a higher percentage of injury prevention, which is ideal for sport. With this, I come to the end of my presentation. I don't have time, otherwise I would have taken you through the 8-stage model of evaluating a tennis serve. I'm sure most of you would have gone through it. I don't want to touch upon the technical aspect of it, because you have obviously coaches to do that, but maybe you can just copy this link below, and you can go through it, because I can't send it through Zoom, the link. There's no hyperlink option. So you can copy this link and go through it just from a fitness point of view as to what are the different phases, because as a tennis player, athlete serves the most. So most of the injuries are also caused because of the serve. So, what the athlete needs to work in terms of range of motion and stability. So that's something that will be useful. Thank you. We can open it up for any questions, or if the panelists have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. I think you have covered the fundamental concepts of training really well, which is most useful for coaches, because this information is what coaches need when they work with athletes. Few questions.
Can you switch on your video?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So again, we just start on questions. I mean, a lot of questions, but I think we can't cover everything. I'll just ask a few.
Sure.
A lot of questions were asked on how to train under 10 kids. So I think you can speak about that aspect.
Okay. So when it's under 10 kids, again, you see which phase of training they are in, right? So that is more the fundamentals. So what I would do is, in terms of fitness, not really have instructions as such, but have more game-oriented exercises. So game-oriented drills where they're working on jumping, where they're working on landing, where they're working on sprints, right? So the most important motor skills that you have to learn is, one is how to land first. Second is how to run, how to sprint, how to stride, how to bound, and how to change direction. So these six aspects, once you learn it, I think it's easier for you to plan their tennis session on court, and it's also easier for them to move up to the next level.
And Chelston, one more aspect I think you didn't have time to speak about is training girls, especially girls who are going through their menstruation and things like that.
Yeah, so I'll just touch upon that. As I said earlier as well, see, up to the age of 10, you can treat the boys and girls almost the same, because the energy levels are the same. In fact, at most times, you'll see the balance and coordination plus stability better in girls up to the age of 10. Now, when you move to 10 to 14, more or less, again, they are the same. But between the age of, I would say, 12 to 16 is when, the girls would reach a stage where their fat percentage will naturally increase. Now, when the fat percentage increases, we got to be more skeptical on what they are doing. Right? We cannot make them perform the same drills that the boys are performing. One, because the boys are growing faster, they're maturing faster, their muscles are growing faster. and the load that they can take is much more than the girls can take. Right? There might be obviously the exceptional 1, 2, or 3 girls, obviously at the professional level as well. There are girls playing at 16, 17 at a very high level, but those are exceptions. All right. So mostly, you will find the case where the girls, because of that excess weight or the excess fat percentage that they're putting on, we need to be a little more. We need to scale them back and make sure that the strength is taken care of. So in that aspect, where for example, I would concentrate more on the lower body, because they again need to learn how to land. Right? As I explained as in the fundamentals, the landing stage. Now the landing stage will change because there's too much load on your muscle. There's too much load on your knees, on your ligaments, right? So first, I would say strength training. Second is your mobility, stability. The balance and coordination, they will anyway have. So just training the strength aspects and being more skeptical about that, being more careful about that, right? Once you see them improve on that aspect, then you put them onto power and plyometrics, and then you treat them like the same. You train them like the energy system, like you train the boys. But the important aspect is to identify when they actually require more strength training as compared to speed and agility or endurance training.
Okay, and to be very specific thing is the day when the girls training them. So,
okay, so this is another very important question, very I think for all coaches to know that see, everyone is different. All right, what one person is experiencing, it need not be the same with the other person. So now, as per research from what they have to say about this process is, as they grow, okay, as they get more accustomed to the menstruation cycle, they tend to not take rest on the days of the period. Or for example, a lot of athletes, because of the stress and tension, get a period during competition, and they go about their normally. Now, why they do that is, one is they're not just because the body, the mind shouldn't ideally shouldn't give up. All right, and secondly is once you do it over a period of time, they get used to it. So whether or not they're what cycle they're going through, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, they've trained under all these circumstances, and high performance will take place. A lot of athletes at the senior level have won championship, have won medals, have won matches on this cycle. So at a developing stage, yes, make sure that so initially just let them take a break. All right, I would say give them a break, let them get used to it. And over a period of time, when the athlete is performing well on the court, and you don't want the stress levels to go higher and things like that, you bring down the intensity, but they can continue training as far as they are comfortable with it.
Okay, now another question, which it's about how important you feel as a strength and conditioning coach working with, like we're talking about tennis here. How important is it that there's a good communication between the tennis coach and the fitness coach? How much information they should share, and what kind of information should be shared?
Yeah, I think as Rohan mentioned, even though tennis is an individual sport, at the end of the day, it is a team sport as well, because a player cannot perform individually without coaches, without a backup system, right? So this is where the communication between coaches is very, very important. Now, I say this with a lot of, with some amount of experience coming back, because when I first entered the tennis court, I had never played tennis in my life. Till today, I have not really, mastered the game to any, to any level. But what I understand is just being on court gives me, I might know all the strength and conditioning or sports science behind, but if you're not on court, you really don't know what's happening in a player's in a player's life or in a training session. So one thing is communication. I think there was a lot for me to learn when Balu sir was, had come into had come into RBTA to take sessions, because the communication that you pass on to me is very, very important. right? Just like in an injury management perspective, when a physio says that, okay, there is the alignment here is wrong, or he has pronated feet and you need to work on this and this. So then I work on that rehab protocol. Same way, the feedback from the tennis coach is very important for me to know as to what to work on, right? So there's one, I'd like to give this example about one of the players who recently played in the Challenger that happened in Bangalore. So I think there was one feedback from the head coach was this player needs to be a little lower, right? When he's lower, he's producing greater force and he's winning more points. He's hitting more winners. So me as an coach, this was the feedback that I could give the head coach, saying that his strength, endurance is not good, but his power is really good. So what I need to work on now, because of that feedback given by the head coach, is to work on that strength, endurance, so that he stays low. There's no injury that happens, because what happens when the player is forced to stay low and he doesn't have the strength, that will lead to injury, right? So that's why he's not staying low. But because of this feedback, I'll make him stay low over a period of time, only after his body's adapted to it. So that's important feedback given from the head coach to the fitness coach. So it is very, very important.
Thank you, Chelston. Thanks for your time and sharing your knowledge. I have no doubt that this information you have passed on is so important and valuable. So many coaches who who wanted to know about fitness and how to train. I mean, if you see the question and answer section, you have a number of questions coming, but obviously we can't take all the questions and answer one by one. But guys, I mean, listening in, if you want to meet Chelston, please make a trip to Bangalore. You can talk to him in person and he'll give you all the time you need. So with that, I think, appreciate your effort and excellent presentation, Chelston, and all the best to you in all your all the work you're doing with your athletes.
Thank you. Thanks. And again, thanks for the opportunity. And I'm really happy to be involved with tennis. And hopefully in the future, I'll try and play a major role in, the whole process of having the athletes from a competitive, from a growing stage to reach the competitive stage. So thank you for the opportunity, and great work having this webinar. Thank you all. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Suresh, over to you, Suresh.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chelston. Wonderful presentation. A lot of good words in the chats. I can see they loved it. Thank you. Very useful. Balu, before you go out, can you come back, Balu? I know we have to wind up, but I have a couple of questions to ask you because about your communication.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. One of the things I want to ask you is, you were talking about coaching during the match.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were giving it, just very, very interesting to listen to. Can you throw some light on what you would do during the match? Like, if you're allowed to teach.
What is it that I would be talking about during the match?
Yeah. Can you throw some light on what you can do, where your limits are, and things like that? Yeah.
Okay. I can give with example, like, the player starts the match and he's kind of not settling in and he's going all over. When during the changeover, we can kind of calm him down or give him the assurance that the match has just started. When the opponent isn't playing unbelievable, and you haven't been at your best, and still the games have been close. So just hang in there and settle down. So that reassurance helps them calm down. I mean, that is one example. The other one is the direct tactical thing. Like, if you notice the opponent is serving more to your backhand and he's winning points, you just point it out that keep an eye on it. He's serving more to your backhand, and this is what is happening. So it's a tactical thing, but mostly I feel where it helps is in the emotional part, where they suddenly look to think of something and you bring them on track from outside. So I mean, for the match I was sitting with Prajnesh, out of in 3 sets, maybe twice I will speak to him.
Okay.
It's not like I talk to him. So twice, and then after that we are only reminding him of that from outside, because you are allowed to speak from the same side, so you can remind him.
Yeah.
And it also depends on player. Like some players would like to keep looking at you for reassurance more.
Yeah.
Some players are okay. I mean, they get the hang of it and they're on their own.
Yeah.
Only then, if they need something, they again look at you or ask you.
Yeah.
Again, goes. You should have to know the player first. Then it's easier, much easier.
Yeah. That's good. I also wanted to ask you one more thing, but I don't think we have time.
Okay.
I'll just mention the question, and the next time you come in as a panelist, then you can probably answer. In the communication with parents,
Yeah.
I think this is something all the coaches need it. I think we can actually take a 5 or 10 minute, presentation on that, on how to deal with parents, how to deal with difficult parents, and what are the expectations and things like that.
Yeah.
So we'll try to do this. Balu, can you do it in one of these days if you have a little time?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah.
So we'll add it. So you can work
You
on
know
it.
how I speak, so I know why you're asking this.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
no, I'm sure you learned. You were in a certain way initially, and then you have come a long way. So I'm sure you will have a lot of things to share. That
Nandan knows
everybody
how the
can
distance.
learn. Yeah. And about tomorrow's session, we're going to start at 10 as usual, but there is a change. We're going to have a different presenter. It was scheduled for me to present tomorrow on goal setting, but it is going to be Janvi talking about the psychological. Janki talking about the psychological aspects of tennis, and it's going to be a very useful session. She's an expert from Mumbai, and she seems to be well known in the tennis circle. She's been working with some good players as well. I'm sure she has a lot of things to tell us. Balu, is there anything you want to add about Janki for tomorrow's session?
The Janki was a former tennis player herself, and
okay.
And also she has been working with the Indian hockey team and a lot of athletes who are at the Olympic and international level.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm sure we have an interesting session coming up, and she will touch upon the tennis related aspect. She can relate to it because she has played.
Yeah. There were a lot of questions about how to work on the mental aspect, aspect.
Exactly, yeah.
So so it's going to be a very useful session for everyone. And tomorrow again we will be having a celebrity to start off things, and then then we'll go right into the session. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, Balu, for a wonderful session, and for Chelston Pinto. It was really throwing light on a lot of different aspects. I had my trainer watching it, and he had very good words about the session. So he mentioned that he's not seen a presentation like this specific for tennis, and Chelston had made it very specific to tennis, which is like hats off. Thank you, everyone, and we'll have this presentation on you. Bye, and have a wonderful day. See you all tomorrow.
Bye, guys. Stay
Bye,
safe.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah. Take care and stay safe.